Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game that was played in the European Club Cup in 1996 between Boris Gelfand and Vladimir Kramnik. It was, dark times for the chess world. The chess world was divided into two governing bodies, or rather FIDE was one governing body. The Professional Chess Association was sort of governing, but their own events. And you had one real world champion, which was Anatoly Karpov at the time. He was the champion of FIDE, who defeated Gata Kamsky, I believe. And you had the strongest player in the world and the champion of the Professional Chess Association. That was Garry Kasparov. The reason why I sometimes mention this when we, show games from this period, as not everyone knows, who played when. Maybe you think Bobby Fischer played in 1996. I don't know. So, best explain it right away. And this game, it hasn't been featured in many books. For example, even Vladimir Kramnik in his own book, where he included many of the games that were very, very nice. This game is not included. For what reason, I don't know. Because it is beautiful, and I thought you guys would enjoy it. And also, I'm using this game sort of as a prelude into a podcast I'll have with Vladimir Kramnik 2 days from now. Sort of a podcast conversation type due to everything that's currently happening in the chess world. I'm not following all the drama in the chess world as much as I've used to, so I don't really know what's going on. I know what I read, but to me it sounds like a whole bunch of nothing. So I invited Kramnik to join me for a nice conversation and to say what's what is this about, what is this about. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to send them over. I will gladly incorporate them into the conversation. So that being said, let's check out this masterpiece. Gelfand with white opens with pawn to d4. I'm not overly introducing either player, as by this point you would have to know who these fine gentlemen are. d4, we have pawn to d5, pawn to c4, and pawn to c6. The Slav defense by Vladimir. We have knight to c3 and knight to f6, knight to f3, pawn to e6, the Semi-Slav. Pawn to e3, knight b to d7, and queen to c2. This is the Stoltz variation, and it's sort of a timeless line that was played back then in 1996, but it's still played by every grandmaster in the world, even in 2025, at the highest level. We have bishop to d6, and now there are a couple of good continuations. You could go bishop d3, bishop d2, you could go pawn to b3, go for a fianchetto of the dark square bishop, or pawn to g4, which was also known at the time. I don't know how known it was. I've seen there were instances of it being played, just not, at what frequency. So g4, and now you could just play pawn to h6 and say, okay, I'm not really interested in anything, but Vladimir accepts the challenge. He goes bishop to b4, which sort of breaks opening principle, as you move the same piece twice in the opening, but here it comes with a very clear idea. If Boris advances g5 now, then the knight can come to e4, and okay, you attack that knight on c3, and okay, now you can pretty much do anything, but it's not a bad game for black at all. So after bishop to b4, we have bishop to d2. Now going knight to e4 would be, losing for black, because after knight captures on e4, if you capture the bishop, the knight will just recapture, and if you capture the knight, then you capture the bishop on b4, and okay, you're not down a piece, but queen e4, and I mean, good luck playing this. You'll not be castling. It's a pretty bad position. Maybe something like c5 can be played, but still, not the position you want to have on move 8 against someone as strong as Kramnik. So queen back to e7, or rather queen developing to e7, and now again you could play something like rook to g1, as it was played in some games, but here we have pawn to a3, and I believe at this point, at the time the game was played, this was considered a new position. Maybe a move prior to that, but after this move there are some instances, for example, I found 3 games after the year 2000 that feature the exact same position. But okay, we can consider this a new position at the time. Bishop captures, and pawn to b6. We have bishop to d3, nicely developing, and bishop to a6. Now attacking the pawn on c4, and Boris says, all right, capture that pawn, as if you go back with the bishop to b7, then you're giving me, you know, pretty much everything I want. Pawn g5, knight e4, you can trade here, captures, captures. You could go knight e5, you could also go knight d2 to go after the e4 pawn. If queen captures, even castles queenside. And it's a very tricky position, but white will be the one pushing here. So after queen a4, we have d captures on c4, trade of light square bishops. We have queen captures, pawn captures on d3, and now queen captures on d3. You could also go after the c6 pawn with queen b7, for example, rook d8, queen captures on c6, and then something like knight d5. Which is also perfectly fine, but Boris went for queen captures on d3, which is also perfectly fine. We have castles kingside, and now pawn to g5, knight to d5, and bishop to d2. And this is where the game becomes extremely interesting, and this is one of the 3 bigger lines that I will show, as this is a classical game. Here, Kramnik played pawn to f5, but pawn to e5 is very interesting, but it's very, very hard to actually play, because after queen to e4, the queen on e7 looking pretty funny, and now if you play e captures on d4, it seems like you can, as the queen is defended by the knight, but then comes queen captures on e7, knight captures, and you're going to play knight captures on d4, and not all that impressive for black. Maybe black can do even better. So the point would be after e5 and queen e4 to play this ugly looking f6 move. And now many moves are possible. You could just defend it with h4. You could continue with rook g1. Definitely makes sense. But the key move here is g6. And then after captures and captures, you will see e captures on d4, knight captures on d4, and now knight to e5, attacking the queen. And you're looking at that d3 square, you're looking at f3 square. The queen must come to f5 to keep an eye on everything. And now you will go something like rook f to e8, and after castles queenside, rook a to d8, and this is something that you would get. So it's you know, looks really nice for black. That's one way you could play it. But Vladimir had a different idea. He played pawn to f5, and now we have castles queenside. The problem with a move like pawn to h4 is that e5 is looking very, very dangerous when the white king is still in the center of the board. But still, you can trade everything. Captures, captures, d captures, queen captures, and now you castle queenside. And it definitely looks like something that can be played. If the knight ever moves from d5, the bishop comes to c3. It's not a bad position. But still, these are all positions that can be played. All of them, you know, if you check the engine, are 0.00. So it's a matter of preference. Boris went for castles queenside right away, and now pawn to c5. Makes sense. You strike against white center. You want to open up the c file to go after the white king. King b1, and now pawn to b5 as well. Sacrificing a pawn to open up the b file, and it's you know, like a slap in the face. It's a pawn you have to accept. Otherwise, you just allow, you know, black to continue pushing further. So you have to capture it. And now you're not going to be the one who's attacking. So queen captures on b5. We have rook 8 to b8 and queen to a5. We have rook to b3. And now comes a move that basically got this game famous. Here, of course, the other rook is coming to b8, so you have to move the rook away from the b file. Boris played king to a2. And that's, you know, it sort of looks like even better move, because then maybe rook b1 can be played. You add additional support. Also, you're pressuring the rook, so it must be defended right away. But king to a1 was the way to go. And the reason for that is pretty incredible, as you'll see. So Boris played king to a2, and now, okay, rook f to b8. We're putting pressure on that b2 pawn. You have to defend it. Rook to b1, and now comes pawn to e5. And that is what Boris missed in this position. The queen is coming to the e6 square. And the problem is you cannot just say, all right, if you're going to waste moves like with pawn to e5, with queen e6, I'm just going to play king back to a1. It cannot be done, because now you've allowed pawn to e4. And this knight really doesn't have any good squares. And now, for example, if knight h4, queen captures on g5, attacks the knight. And now look at this. Queen captures on a7, attacks the knight on d7. Rook 3 to b7, attacking the queen. Now queen to a6, threatening queen e6 check to pick up the knight on d5. You're gonna just nicely defend with knight 5 to b6. Again, the knight on h4 is hanging, so queen b5, now threatening some nasty stuff with captures on c5. And here you would have to calculate all of this, and then, okay, you could obviously calculate it from this point if you've actually played this line. But I'm going to show it because it's a lot of fun. You cannot capture the knight right away. If you capture the knight right away, then after d captures on c5 and knight c8, yes, everything is defended. But look at this, queen c4 check. And now after the king moves, you play c6. And now after rook to c7, which looks like a great move, queen to f7, threatening queen to e8, which will be checkmate. So queen to e7, and now a temporary queen sacrifice. C captures on d7, and after rook out, because if you capture it, then just another queen comes into the game, captures, queen captures, knight captures, and now you get the bishop to c3, and white is up only a pawn, but with the passed a and b pawn, this can be considered completely winning for white. So what you would have to do in this position where we so boldly capture the knight on h4 is go rook c7, and then black is just winning. That's the point, is now there's nothing more to be done. If you capture on c5, now it's not a problem. Just rook captures, everything is defended, the knights are defending each other, and after one check, you can even go knight c4, and that's it. You attack the queen, you're putting pressure on b2, and the knight is still hanging, so whatever happens, let's say bishop to b4, you just capture the knight, and you are very happy. Of course, you cannot capture, the rook is still guarding the knight, you cannot capture the rook as the other rook is attacking the queen, so that will not work. So unfortunately, the king should have come to a1 right away. So Boris tries rook h to, sorry about that, that was an accident, rook h to c1, and he allows queen to e6. So queen to e6, and now he again realizes that there's nothing better than king to a1, and he played it. Because now if you play something like d captures on c5 or whatever, the king on a2 is in big trouble. First, you attack the queen, so moving the rook with tempo, and now if you, let's say, capture on a7, it's a very quick checkmate. A double check from the queen and knight, king to a1, and now queen to a2 will be checkmate. So after queen to e6, we have king to a1, and now e captures on d4. And now what do you play? I'm going to show you what Boris played, and then I'm going to show you an engine line that sort of maybe holds in some, miraculous universe where, black doesn't really play all the best moves. Boris played rook captures on c5, but the move sort of the engine likes is pawn to g6. You are threatening to capture on h7, which you don't really care that much about, but the real idea is knight g5. So if captures on g6, you're going to play knight to g5, and now after queen to f6, you're going to play e captures on d4, as now the bishop defends the knight, and after queen captures on d4, you will play bishop to c3, and now comes the main idea. Knight captures on c3, rook captures, and queen to d2, attacking the knight on g5, and now after the knight moves and attacks the queen, finally you play queen captures on c3. And okay, queen captures on c3, b captures of course cannot be played because you just get checkmated, the other rook delivers checkmate, so you would have to capture with the queen, queen captures on c3, but now you just trade everything, captures, captures, captures with check, king captures, and now king f7, and you're up a pawn, but in this endgame it is most likely winning. So it's not, black would still be winning, whether or not, a win would have been found. That's a different story. But okay, rook captures on c5 by Boris, and now knight captures on c5. We have queen captures on c5, and the question is, what did Boris miss? It's pretty scary, and it's one of the nicer lines we've shown lately. Try to find it all the way. So have at it. While I give you a couple of seconds, win the game for Vladimir from this really, really difficult position. The move is knight to c3, but that is not the shocking move. That is there's not much to consider here. Of course, you're not going to be capturing with a pawn, like in the line that we've just shown. Rook captures on b1, king a2, and then the other rook delivers checkmate. So that's out of the question. Bishop captures, well, it can be played. It's not much. The other pawn just comes to c3. You still have all of the same problems. So what Boris played is knight captures on d4, and now comes the move you had to see when you played knight to c3. If you just found knight to c3 and didn't look for knight d4 and what happens next, then it doesn't count. So if you would like, you can have a second chance at pausing the video. I can't stop you. But in case you don't, here Vladimir played rook captures on b2 and sacrificed his queen. And of course, we already mentioned that if you allow rook captures on b1, king a2, rook to b2, that will be checkmate. So of course, the queen cannot be captured. For those of you who like to see it, I can also... the knight is already on c3, so this would be just mate in 1. Sorry about me being silly. So he played rook captures on b2, and now again we have a position where only one move is winning, and again the one you had to see at the first time I asked you to pause the video, but this one is the nicest one. So have at it. The move, of course, is queen to a2 check. And that's it. Nothing more to be done here. It was in this position on move 28 that Boris Gelfand resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. We can even give it a double exclamation mark, as it is, a brilliant sequence of moves. Only move for white is to capture the queen, and now, of course, rook to b1 will be checkmate. So there we have it. A brilliant game by both of them. A very nice, very nice Slav for black. Vladimir really found some very nice lines. Sacrificed that b5 pawn, and then everything just took its course. It's as if we were watching, let's say, Kasparov play, and not Kramnik. But that's that's the thing with these guys. They don't. Kasparov somehow always forced it to be an attacking game. But when you're at that level, you can do that. For Magnus, let's say he does what the position demands. If he demands positional approach, he will play positionally. If it requires him to sacrifice and go for a blistering attack, he will do that. So yeah, all in all, very nice game. Like I said, if you have any questions for former world champion Vladimir Kramnik, you can even ask them in this video or send them to me via email. I will gladly incorporate them into the conversation. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nicely played by Vladimir. I would like to thank Seshadri Subramanian, Andrej Shrade, Johan Kron, James Anderson, and Guillermo Ismael Garcia Borges for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.